Jeff, you were telling me you have like a pretty important holiday coming up in the next month.
It's Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So Rosh Hashanah is literally the head of the year. So it's when the new year, according to the lunar calendar, will begin. So because the Jewish calendar follows the lunar calendar, we flow within probably 30 days. So a holiday is never on the same day. So it can be, it's in September this year, it can be in October. And then following Rosh Hashanah is Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. And we have basically a 25 and a half hour fast from sundown to sundown. And it's to atone for our sins. But it's also interesting because it parallels to some degree Ramadan, which is a month of fasting from sun up to sundown. So it's a different approach to the same thing. I never look forward to it. And yet, it's kind of the high point of the year because you get away from material things. You get away, and our synagogue and many others utilize that day also to give food to homeless shelters, give to care and share. In other words, you know, the thing is, okay, whatever you're not eating that day, give to someone in need.
Yeah.
So do you guys have parallels in Christianity?
Well, the fasting that comes to my mind, I guess, is over Lent, but that's not typically as long a fast. But it's also, I guess, that concept of giving something up, also purification, I guess, in anticipation of something holy coming. Yeah.
Individual people will fast specifically over a decision, if that makes sense, like to try and discern or to hear from the Lord. But there's other times where like a church decides to do a fast for direction. But I love the fact that you were talking about how there's also the replacement of saying like we give, you know, what we're not consuming to others.
One of the things I've learned in the Torah is it talks about when you harvest the crops, you leave a corner of the field that you don't harvest for the poor.
Yeah.
And so that's always kind of a neat thing. And that's part of our tradition, I think. Part of our tradition has always been giving back and social justice.
Yeah, that's in Deuteronomy, right? I was like, I recognize that one too. That is correct. We got that too.
Yeah. Shared.
It's a shared one.
Shared one.
Well, and that's cool.
Yeah.
And you were talking about commonalities earlier.
Well, and I think it's one of the driving forces, you know, for us to do this kind of work as well, is the sense that our faith traditions give us that it's a good thing to give back to the community, to keep in mind those who are in need in our community and look for ways to help. And this is one of the most hands-on ways to help that I've come across, you know, in terms of, you know, physically building something for a community member who's in need.
But there's also so much room in there for that sort of one-on-one communication where people can kind of get to know each other and learn about each other's traditions, and if nothing else, feel a little bit more comfortable maybe to ask some of the questions that are a little bit harder down the road too. How do we encourage, or what are some practical ways that we can build bridges with others? And I'm interested to see what you guys think, because I think that's something we always need to be cognizant as we're leading from our individual congregations and groups, to recognize how do people take that first step.
I think a lot of it has to do with breaking bread together. You know, I think that's something we all share in common. We all like to eat, but it gives you a sense of focus, a sense of common ground. So I think getting together and having this kind of conversation over a meal, and also having the meetings at different places of worship, because I think there's not always a comfort level of going into somebody else's place of worship.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, one of the nice things, whether it's breaking bread or working together on a project, we're kind of doing something side by side in parallel, right?
Yeah.
So all the focus isn't necessarily on jumping straight into really important topics of discussion or, how are we different? How are we the same? And so it gives you something to come together around and highlights, again, the things that we have in common, which are much more than the things that we have different. And so, being able to make it easy for people to come in. Sometimes it's intimidating, whether it's going into a different space that you're not used to going into and you don't know whether you're dressed appropriately or whether, there's something that you need to change about yourself in order to be respectful of that space, or whether it's somebody like me that's new to this kind of work. Being able to create a welcoming environment for, all different kinds of people is something that I think you guys have done really well, and that I would encourage others to do.
I love that. Yeah, that brings to mind, actually, the first time I went to Temple Bay Torah, I remember I was so nervous. How do I dress? Is this appropriate? What should I say? When do I stand up? When do I sit down? When do I sing? When do I not? One of the things that was great about the first time that I went, I spoke a little bit about Habitat. Then I helped the religious school because they wanted to make a present for our homeowner. And so they essentially took materials from our restore location, pots and things like that, and they made them into wind chimes. And it was so fun because it was just one of those things that as we started to get going, then that's kind of when those natural conversations get to happen.
I think we all have that anxiety. It's just those people who can put that aside and say, yeah, I'm nervous about it, but it's worth doing. It's worth pursuing this. And that's great because you bring a level of enthusiasm that after a while some of us start to lose, and it reinvigorates those of us who've been around a while. Because we don't get anything done if we let anxieties, stop us from doing what we know is the right thing to do.
That's right.
I think it was Martin Luther King that said something to the effect that it's always the right time to do the right thing.
Yeah, so one of the other things that I think can kind of get in our way, perhaps, is just our fear about how our potential faith tradition can be perceived by others in the community, if that makes sense. And Vida was talking a little bit about kind of that question of what she would hope kind of El Paso County residents know about the Muslim community here in El Paso County. And she just really wants people to understand that the Muslim community is happy and that they're willing to engage and serve, and that they're passionate about trying to build something that's long lasting in the community.
There are stereotypes of different faith traditions that for the most part are false, but unless people meet a Muslim, a Jew, a Baha'i or a Hindu or a Buddhist, they don't know that a lot of the stereotypes aren't true. And that's kind of why relationship building is important to any kind of great task like the Interfaith Build. We have so much more in common. We all want a place to live. We all want food. Yes. We all want to be respected. We all want to have dignity in our work and in our lives. So,
yeah.
Is there something that you wish people would know about the Jewish community locally, or anything that you wish people would understand?
I think there's that false narrative out there that Jews, who total like 1.5% of the population, control everything. That seems to be that false narrative that the white supremacists have spread. And that's what I would like people to know. We're just like everybody else. Yeah. We're struggling to get from point A to point B, and we're struggling to raise our kids, and we're struggling to make a living just like everybody else.
What do you think, Stephanie?
The Christian community has not done a good job of holding space for other faith traditions. It's a problem, and it's something that we need to work on, and we need to challenge ourselves to do better. It's because I think we have to consciously seek out opportunities to get to know other people, to not expect for it to come to us. And by it, I mean intercultural, interfaith opportunities. We need to take responsibility to be good neighbors to everyone in our community. And so, that's something that I think is really important. The diversity that is, out there in the faith community, and that's within each faith group as well, has a lot to bring and has a lot of benefits, and it's part of respecting each other.
I think that that's part of the reason that Habitat, specifically Pikes Peak Habitat here locally, was interested in engaging in interfaith work because of that reality. We are a Christian organization, we're proud of that, but we also serve everyone in our community. So that's people of all faiths and people that don't have a faith tradition. And so I think there was this recognition too of saying, well, if we're trying to build sustainability and self-reliance in our community, then we also have to know how to do that better. And I think that you can't really do that well unless you know the community deeply. Well, if we're looking to be as effective as we can in the community in serving, then we have to learn and understand what that looks like in different contexts, whether that's socioeconomic or cultural or with different faith traditions.
Bring to it the desire to know, as you mentioned earlier. That curiosity is a fundamentally important trait. But, for years I wanted to be involved with Habitat, and it was always, well, it's a Christian organization. They don't want people like me. And so it was great when Dustin first reached out and said, yeah, we do want people like you.
Oh, something that I've been thinking about lately and that I think is important is I really value coming together and working on something important to the community together in normal times. And I'm so happy to be a part of a group that is choosing to do that on the daily when, for us, things are going pretty well. And it makes me wonder if by using that muscle and by practicing this, all the time, that we might be better equipped than during those times when it's absolutely critical for us to come together and work together in order to confront, tragedy when you're needed.
As an example of that, during COVID, when we were struggling because our space is small, we were struggling to hold indoor kinds of services and events, and your church gave us space. So we held like a Hanukkah party at Grace St. Stephen's. So it was very cool that we were able to have that kind of relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's awesome. I didn't even know that.
I didn't know that either.
Okay. So,
That's great.
well, thank you.
Hey, anytime.
Yeah. No, but those are the partnerships that this kind of work can build, where you know who to talk to. And you can say, look, we don't agree on everything, but we agree on the fact that we respect each other.
Going out and having experiences with other people who are outside of our normal circles can really change our viewpoint about how the world is. And you can feel so much more optimistic about the world because all of a sudden you realize that, like, hey, even beyond my circle, there are so many good people out there who are working every day that share my values, and that, we're working towards the same thing in our community.
Yeah, within our own faith tradition, we often have more more egregious disagreements about things. And it's easier, as you said earlier, to give people from another religion grace when you can't give it to your neighbor, the person who supposedly believes what you believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's like because they're family and you can bicker and poke at and have maybe a lot more history with people, in your own family and in the situation, maybe within your own faith tradition than others. But I don't know. What do you think, Jeff?
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think there's a degree of safety like you have in your own family, so the disagreements can get louder and more intense, where with non-family members it tends to be a little bit more walking on eggshells.
We're on our best behavior.
Exactly. And that's what's kind of cool about the relationship building. You can start to ask other folks from different faiths more difficult questions without sounding like you're trying to create a gap or division. But it's always a learning experience.
I mean, in some ways it is nice to know, even in those areas where it just feels like we might have to agree to disagree, we can still work together. And there can still be relationship that moves forward. And that doesn't have to be easy, but there is a sense that we can still have our own traditions and still be able to work towards something together.
I think we have to counteract the narrative that is out there today, where if you don't agree with me, you're a traitor, you're an enemy of the state. That's where we, as Habitat, as the Interfaith Builder for Unity group, where we have to be. Okay, I don't like what you just said, but we're still friends.
Yeah.
We have to build a world that is going to be comfortable for our kids and grandkids to live in.
It is.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah. Anything worthwhile is slow.
Don't need to be scared of or letting the fear hold us back from, saying something dumb or not wearing the right clothes, or because we'll do something wrong. We'll definitely make a mistake along the way.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for this conversation. I feel like it's been fruitful.
It's been a lot of fun.
Good.